All right, welcome to the August 28th, 2023 board meeting. The first order of business is the approval to the agenda. Have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The next order of business is the approval of the minutes from the July 31st, 2023 meeting. Have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, board members, we are in budget season and it is time for our first hearing. It's the first of two required hearings that we'll have in the next couple of weeks. And I want to commend Courtney Brown for excellent work again in developing this budget. She's going to share with you and certainly will ask questions. Please do along the way, any questions that you have. No action on this tonight, just the first hearing when you consider the budget. Courtney, take it away.
Good afternoon, everybody. Today I'm presenting the FY24 proposed annual budget. I've provided the required public budget hearing documents on the back table as you come in. These include the proposed annual budget booklet that is bound in blue and the public response forms on the table. So if anyone has questions, that's how they would submit those questions about the budget. And we will address those on the second hearing on September the 11th. The proposed annual budget booklet includes information on how the budget is prepared. It includes a glossary of terms and state requirements for the budget committees. And the supplemental information sheets in green provide the information for each school's portion of the foundation program allocation, the projected enrollment and projected employees for each school site. Our fiscal year is 10/1 to 9/30, and revenues are estimated based on prior year collections and projected increases from city and county officials based on ad valorem tax projections. And financial resources are assigned to various programs of the school system in an effort to best serve the needs of the student body. The budget is prepared with a conservative approach, meaning revenues are estimated with a slight increase and expenditures are based on actual experience and planning with department and program directors. So this is our proposed FY24 budget for all of our funds. The first column you see there is the general fund. This is the primary operating fund of the school district. This is the world that we live in here at central office. This includes the majority of state and local revenues and related expenditures, except for those that are required to be accounted for in a different fund type due to restrictions for use. The primary source of revenues are from the Education Trust Fund, and state revenues from the Education Trust Fund Foundation Program are allocated to us in the amount of $43.6 million for FY24. This is our allocation from the ETF based on our reported average daily membership on last year's enrollment after the first 20 days of school. We are anticipating local revenues of $51.1 million, and these are primarily from ad valorem taxes and a small amount from city sales tax. For FY24, we're projected a 5% increase in ad valorem taxes over the prior year budget based on current year's collections. And you'll hear my July financial report. As of July 31, our collections are almost 3% above the FY23 budgeted amount. So I believe 5% is still a conservative estimate for FY24. Next, our expenditures are reported based on functions of use or the activities for which they are incurred. We have budgeted expenditures for instructional services in the amount of $57.1 million and $16.5 million for instructional support services. Expenditures that are included in this category are used for teachers and aides, salaries and benefits, instructional and testing supplies, technology services, and health services. We also have budgeted $800,000 for the purchase of Chromebooks using our advancement in technology allocation that we received in this fiscal year. We actually received it in July, and I'll talk about that whenever I deliver the July financial report. Expenditures for operation and maintenance in the amount of $10.5 million include maintenance salaries and benefits, utilities, maintenance and janitorial supplies, building and equipment repairs, maintenance contracts, and SROs. We have 13 total SROs, 4 of which are provided by the city at a cost to us of about $900,000 annually. This amount is budgeted to be paid for with the advancement in technology funds that I just spoke about that we received in FY23. Okay, the next category is auxiliary services. This is funding our transportation operations. We provide transportation services to our ex-ed students and students traveling between the high school and freshman campus for classes. We provide transportation for field trips, athletics, and an employee shuttle. Then our general and administrative services in the amount of $3.3 million include our central office salaries and benefits, professional services, insurance premiums, and operating supplies. We also have capital outlay budgeted to be paid for with our advancement in technology funds in the amount of $1.68 million. This is budgeted in the event that we receive funds from the Lieutenant Governor's capital grant funds, and if we're required to put up the 25% match, required to get those. Our expenditures, other expenditures are for our preschool operations. We receive an allocation of about $191,000 from the state, and the remaining amount is funded locally. Our other fund uses include transfers to and from schools and the CMP pass-through for salaries and benefits. So that brings us to a projected FY24 budget deficit of $977,000. This appears as an overall deficit in FY24 because we are spending $3.38 million of our advancement in technology funds that we received in FY23, but we have budgeted to spend in FY24. That's why it appears to be a deficit, but really our overall operations from all other general fund sources puts us at a $2.4 million surplus had we not have gotten that money and reserved it for FY24. So the projected beginning fund balance, which is where we will end FY23, will be $11.8 million. And this will leave us with $10.9 million at the end of FY24, and that's equivalent to 1.36 months of fund balance reserve. The state requires us to maintain 1 month, so that equals about 8 months of operations based on our general fund expenditures. The next fund type is our special revenue fund. This fund accounts for the proceeds of specific revenue sources that are legally restricted to expenditures for specific purposes. The largest federal revenues that we receive in a typical year are for the IDEA or Special Education Program and the Child Nutrition Program or CNP. We receive approximately $1.4 million from IDEA, and the CNP funds vary based on the meals served and the current reimbursement rate. This fund also accounts for our local schools' public funds, which would be our registration fees and course fees, and our extended day program operations. We also have some carryover funds in this fund from our American Rescue Plan, or ESSER funds. We received about $2 million in FY22, and the carryover balance of $400,000 will be used next summer for camps to bridge learning gaps from the loss of instructional time due to COVID. The next fund is our debt service fund, and this fund holds cash in escrow for sinking fund payments on our qualified school construction bonds that will mature in 2026 in the amount of $4.4 million. The next fund, the Capital Projects Fund, accounts for resources to be used for the acquisition, construction, or construction of major capital facilities. Our Education Trust Fund capital purchase allocation of $2.45 million from the Foundation Program is accounted for in this fund. For FY24, $1.8 million of this will be used for debt service and the remaining $581,000 for capital purchases. To receive this allocation from the foundation program, we have to provide a 0.45 mil property tax match, which is $420,000 this year. The last fund is the fiduciary funds. This represents our non-public monies collected for local school activities. This includes fundraising and concession sales for specific activities, student organization fees, and private donations. Okay, I wanted to show you some charts so you can visualize how our revenues are broken out. We receive 42% of our overall revenues from our state foundation allocation from the Education Trust Fund. 55% is from our local taxes and 2% from federal agencies, and 1% is other revenues. Our expenditures are made up of 74% of instruction and instructional support services. Our operations and maintenance budget is 10%, followed by the debt service at 5%, transportation at 4%, general and administrative 3%, others 2%, and this year we have capital outlay of 2%. Sorry, I didn't advance my slide over here. Anyway, that's the slide I just talked about, sorry. Okay, next, the foundation program units. So the budget begins with the information that comes from the State Education Trust Foundation allocation sheet. This information is presented on the next few slides. The first section of information reported on the state allocation sheet relates to system average daily membership and state allocated program units. This year, we had a decrease in ADM of 43.6 from last year, resulting in a very slight change in earned program units. The state determines funding for teacher units by dividing the ADM in each grade by the FY24 grade divisor as determined by the Alabama State Department of Education. Principals are allotted per school site. Assistant principals, counselors, and librarians are allotted based on school ADM. And this is a chart that summarizes our foundation program allocations by school. And you'll see it lists all the schools' ADM and then all of our units that are funded by the state. Okay, the next part of our foundation program sheet outlines where or what the revenues are specifically to be used for. So from the state foundation program, we received $27.3 million for salaries. This is an increase of $299,000 from prior year. This increase is to fund part of the 2% raise for state earned units, and the increase in other current expense picked up the remaining amount. We received $10.1 million for fringe benefits. This is an increase of $46,000 from prior year. This allocation is to be used to fund the fringe benefits relating to salaries of our state earned units. And these benefits include the employer's portion of FICA and Medicare tax, the teacher's retirement system contribution match, health insurance of $9,600 per year, and unemployment fund contributions, and 2 personal and 5 sick leave days at a rate of $120 per day. We received $10.3 million for other current expense, or OCE. This is an increase of $710,000 from the prior year. Our allocation is based on the total state allocation, which is a fixed amount determined annually by the legislature. Each school system is given an allotment based on their share of total units. This money has more flexibility and can be expended for operating expense or salary expense, but we use ours for support salaries. This year, there was an increase in the per unit allocation for student instructional materials from $900 to $1,000. The state split the allocation into 2 parts this year. They gave us $430.85 in the FY23 fiscal year to be available for teachers to use as soon as school starts. And the remaining $569.15 per unit will come to us in our monthly foundation allocation. The total allocation of $1,000 was given to teachers as soon as school started to purchase classroom materials, and all the funds are expected to be spent by 9/30/24. So all of these amounts are allocated based on our state earned units with the exception of textbooks, which is calculated on a per ADM rate. So we get $75 per ADM per student. In order to receive this foundation programming from the Education Trust Fund, school systems are required to provide a 10 mil property tax match. Our local match increased by $316,000 from last year for a total of $8.4 million this year. Okay, and as I said earlier, most of our revenues earmarked for specific purposes are accounted for in the special revenue fund. But the state does allocate amounts from the foundation program to be used for specific purposes as well. These amounts are included in the general fund budget. We received $599,000 for school nurses, which is an increase of $148,000 from last year. The State Department gives us a set amount per district and then an amount per student. In addition to the state funds we receive, we spend approximately $700,000 in local funds to provide our 12 school nurses and additional nurse contracts based on specific needs of our students. We receive an allowance to offset a tech coordinator salary in the amount of $68,000. And we receive an operating allowance of $446,000 to be used to operate the system school buses for the year. The at-risk allocation of $57,000 is to be used for tutoring for students who are performing at an academic level below current grade placement. And we also receive an allocation for our career tech program in the amount of $32,000. So here, now that we're talking about the general fund, so here's a chart that shows how our revenues are broken out in the general fund. 46% of our general fund revenues are from the state foundation allocation, and 54% are from local taxes. Our general fund budgeted expenditures by function, instruction and instructional support make up 78% of our budget. Operations and maintenance is next at 11%, and then our general admin at 3%, debt service at 4%, capital outlay 2%, and transportation and other are 1% of our budget. Okay, so this is the general fund expenditures by type of expenditure. You'll see our personnel expenditures make up 82% of the general fund budget, followed by professional services and utilities of 9%, materials and supplies 4%, and debt service at 4%, and then other expenditures 1%. Okay, here is how our FY24 budget compares to the FY23 budget. Projected revenues increased due to a $900,000 increase in the foundation allocation for raises. $2.4 million was the projected increase in ad valorem taxes and about $50,000 just for interest earnings. Our expenditures for instructional services increased based on our the 2% raise. And we also have an allocation or a mandate from the state for a ExEd classroom teacher supplement in the amount of $1,000 per ExEd classroom teachers that is included in that budget. We've also got some allocations for band and choir and dance in the amount of $85,000. And we reduced our budget by about $100,000 in our technology department. Our operations and maintenance budget increased based on the step and raise. We also have an increase in some contracted janitorial services. We did reduce some maintenance contracts in the amount of $200,000, but we're also adding some 2 maintenance positions to that as well. Our auxiliary services, the increase was for raise and fuel cost. General administrative, we did not fill the assistant superintendent, the second assistant superintendent position. In FY '23, we had some additional expenditures for election cost. And then FY '24, we saw about $100,000 increase in our liability insurance. So that hit us pretty hard. And then the capital outlay, 1.6 is, like I said earlier, it's the capital match in the case that we do get the Lieutenant Governor's grant funds. Our debt service increased $150,000 due to an additional Chromebook lease payment that will start coming due in FY '24. And then we got raise and step increases for our preschool workers. And that brings us down to transfers in and out net, and that's just the fluctuation of transfers between the schools. Okay, here's a few charts to let everyone see, historically how we compare from year to year, since when we do look at the budget, we're generally just looking at 1 year at a time. So this is our general fund revenue expenditure comparison from 2016. And you see in FY '23, it looks like a little bump between our revenues and expenditures, and that's because of that $3.3 million of advancement in technology money that we received in FY '23, but we won't spend it until FY '24, so that's why it looks like there's a dip there in FY '24 where our expenditures exceed our revenues. And here is a illustration of our total employees budgeted for all funds. You'll see that we have 403, about 404 teachers who are state funded, and we locally fund about 109 teachers. This takes up approximately $8 million of our local tax dollars that we spend to fund these teachers. And here's a chart of how our total salaries are broken out. We spend 59% on teachers, 4% on principals and assistants, 3% on counselors, 1% on librarians, 4% on other certified staff, 3% on supplements, and 26% goes to support staff. Okay, here's another chart just for illustration. This shows the historical trend of our general fund salaries and benefits and the portion that we fund with local tax dollars. For FY '24, the state passed a 2% raise and increased our OCE allocation, which helps to offset some of the amount that we would otherwise have to fund locally for support staff. And this is the same chart again, just to illustrate, you can see how our general fund salaries and benefits of $76,000 make up, almost our whole, we have 96,000 in total expenditures, but 76,000 is salaries and benefits, and how our revenues compare to that. Okay, and here is the breakout of our annual debt service obligations. Out of the $5.5 million that we owe, we pay $3.64 million from the general fund. We have a $38,000 bus lease that's funded with fleet renewal funds, and the remaining $1.89 million is paid with our state capital purchase allocation. And this chart shows how our debt service payments have increased over the years. Payments increased primarily in 2020 with the issue of the 2019 warrants for capital projects, and then in FY '24 it increased due to an additional Chromebook lease. And I will take any questions or comments before Dr. Freeman talks about the capital plan.
Of course, you said 110 teachers locally funded. Okay, and one point I want to make about that is that we reduced about $1 million in certified units from this past budget cycle in order to get ahead on the fund balance that Courtney mentioned to you, because we're gonna be a couple of million at least in the plus. And a large part of that's because of the cuts we did make there. So a question on, as it relates to special revenue. So we get a certain amount from the federal government for special education program. How much locally do we put in that is not covered by federal allocation?
It's probably about $10 million.
10 million additional?
Yeah.
Okay. Question, board members? I'll speak some more about some general comments about the budget after I talk about capital plan, but that one's next. As part of the budget process, we present a 5-year capital plan to you for consideration and vote, and this is the 5-year plan as you see it. I'd just like to walk through it quickly with you. Courtney referenced one of the fund sources, which is the capital fund on your statement sheet, and it generally is about $2.3 to $2.4 million. So when you look at the FY24 column, what you see is 1.9 million, and that goes to debt service. That is debt service paid on a note that we're paying over a 10-year period of time that finishes up the projects it presents in dollar years a few years ago. So most of the money that we earn from the state is spent in debt service in that category. We have some other fund sources that we're able to utilize. One of those is a grant from the state called Public School College Authority, which administers grants. And in this case, we have this revenue, 600 plus, I can't see it, 637, I think.
Yeah.
$637,000, which is going to be specifically for safety, security improvements in our facilities and campus. These are recommendations we have from the consultants we work with. And over the course of this year, most especially in the summer, we'll be making some improvements to our campuses with those funds.
837.
837, thank you. That's right, it's two sources. You got PSCA funds, and then the state allocated an additional 387,000, which gets that total number. Thank you, Will. Accessibility improvements, so we've got an allocation in there for some work at Dolly Ridge. As you know, this was one of the identified areas we have with accessibility, and those areas are priorities to us, safety and accessibility. So we'd like to spend some funds this year for a project at Dolly Ridge that will actually pave from the upper part of the campus down to the lower fields where soccer events are, and try to create some accessibility parking at the bottom. Some things that we need to do relative to that. I do think that project's going to be higher than that, and we'll evaluate it at that time with all of our funds. But that is what that specific project is. We do have some handrails in different parts of our campus that need to be replaced, and so that'll be a part of that as well. Energy management facility improvements, we have $6.75 million allocated for this coming up fiscal year. And you'll notice the source is marked as unknown because we don't have the money. We need to do the projects, but we don't yet have the money. So in this particular case, the lieutenant governor has a set of funds that was allocated to him by the legislature to use for school construction. Schools can apply for up to $5 million and may have up to a 35% match. That equals $6.75 million. If we are successful in getting that grant, what we would do is we would go to things that would help all of our schools immediately and give us some return on work. So in that case, we would put LED lighting in all of our facilities, interior and exterior. We would put new controls over all our mechanical systems, which would give us universal control, obviously, over that. And that helps a long way in terms of cost savings, particularly weekends, non-use hours. We would do some additional work on our building envelope and just to create some more insulated spaces. And we would do some improvements to water usage. So we expect several $100,000 of return in our annual utilities budget by doing this. But this would be a project that would allow us to do some work that we needed to do with energy management and cover all of our campuses. Adaptive playground equipment, there are some needs for some of our playgrounds to have adaptive PE equipment, and that's marked as an unknown source at this point. Theater improvements, we have some things we just need to do relative to the high school's theater, mainly in storage, sound, just some different upkeep things that haven't been done in a while, so I've allocated some funds for that. That doesn't obviously begin to address any of the long-term needs we have with the arts program, but it's a good step for some general theater improvements. Athletic facilities improvements, that is an agenda item on the business section tonight. We need to do a renovation in a female locker room to add some showers. Because our numbers continue to grow in athletics, we just don't have the space. We don't have enough space for showers for our young ladies. So this would be a project to do some renovation within the existing infrastructure to provide more showers. We got some general dollars in there for heating and air conditioner improvements as needed. $100,000 doesn't go very far, I can tell you, but it does help with a few things here and there. And then we've got some allocation for classroom furniture and painting. You'll notice that technology Chromebook refresh is noted below. That word's A&T, the letters A&T stand for advancement technology. Courtney has talked about that allocation, which is a supplemental allocation from the state we get every year. We would like to take $800,000 of that and purchase Chromebooks. That way we're not getting involved in a lease, but we would out and out purchase. Bus, we need to replace one of our older buses, and so I've got the allocation in there that would come from a state fund source that's called fleet renewal. That's in the budget as well, Courtney mentioned to you. And that's all for this fiscal year. So there's not much in the capital plan, but you can look at the next 4 years, the 5-year plan, to get a sense of what we have in front of us. I'll just make a couple of notes for you. The energy management facility improvement note is $35 million. That's what we anticipate are the additional needs we have for heating and air conditioning and for roofs. It's no different than it was before May 9th. We still need to replace those things. We just don't have any money to do it right at this moment. We've got some additional dollars in place for technology, Chromebook refresh, so we would put that in every year to just out and out purchase Chromebooks for our students. A bus fleet renewal, and then some technology infrastructure that we know will be coming next year. And then you'll notice at the bottom, we're starting to put in some One Rebel, One Future projects to start outlining some of the additional needs we have. And we'll start laying those in. That's really an unknown fund source, but I want to make sure it stays on our capital plan. And that's generally what the 5-year plan looks like. Obviously, it prioritizes safety, security, accessibility, and then our energy management. I'll field any questions you got on that.
No, but I would like to say, because I feel like you're discussing a lot of the maintenance and things that we need. But we are going to be pitching to the community in the next couple months, just an opportunity where the community can get involved, and they will be able to give directly where they want to help put their funds somewhere where they feel passionate about and in areas that they want to support. So keep an eye out. You'll get a lot more details coming soon. I mean, we're gonna take care of all the maintenance and kind of the stuff that's not as fun. And we know everybody else wants to really be a part of something bigger and better. And we're gonna give them a great opportunity to do that. We're just getting everything worked out before we present it, because we know there's a lot of faithful, passionate, loyal rebels that want to give to our school system in a certain capacity, and you're gonna have an opportunity to do it. So we're super excited about it.
Yeah.
So be on the lookout. That will be coming soon.
Thanks, John. Just some general comments about the budget. First, let me say that the budget that we have this year does reflect growth in our general fund reserve, which is goal number 1 that we said had to take place for our budget. We needed to create a little bit more reserve than what we have. Courtney's anticipating 1.36 months, and we hope maybe it's a little bit more. But that's a good place for us to be. And so we can then begin to start looking at some of the other priorities we have. But I will say within this reserve, within this budget, we still prioritize class sizes. So when you go into our elementary buildings, you will certainly find class sizes to be certainly well below averages. You find that in secondary, but it is most definitely spelled out in elementary. You see an emphasis on making sure we provide local funding for students who have additional needs through special education program. We are funding a significant portion of the nurses, of the 16 nurses that we have in our school system. We fund 9 of the 13 school resource officers we have. We fund all of the technology needs that we have. We fund, I think, about 6 counselors more than the state provides funding for, plus a social worker. So a lot of things are still in place to make sure we keep prioritize what makes our system special. So with that in mind, knowing that we're able to build our reserve a little bit, we can start looking at other things. This year, I would like to take a look at our employee compensation. We have been awarded 6 raises in the last 9 years, but assuming the state doesn't award another raise, I still would like to look and make sure that we have the competitive compensation package we need for our employees. So we'll be doing that this year. I hope they're able to address some of that next fiscal year. I would like for us to make a full assessment of our current enrollment trends, the current financial analysis we think is going to take place over the next several years, and make some decisions about our capital needs that we have. We outlined a lot of those in One Rebel, One Future, but we need to look again at all of those and determine at what point over the next several years we would be able to do something in the way of financing to do all of the things that we need to do. So we know it's still a goal, but we can check off that we think we're getting a reserve in place where we need it to be. That allows us to pay some debt service off. You saw a while ago that we have debt service on leases for Chromebooks and buses, and I think we can pay that off pretty quickly. If not this fiscal year, the next fiscal year. So we're paying down a little bit of debt as well, and allow us to focus on these needs. So, and to Jacqueline's point, there are a lot of things that are in the capital plan that we think are important. We know we need to take care of our facilities, and once we have the financing to do that, we're going to take care of what we have. But there are a lot of other things that we really know we need in our schools that we just don't have funding for, and there'll be opportunities for people to think about how they can support us in something that's important to them. So with that said, really good budget, Courtney. I appreciate it. Other questions for? All right, very good. We will come back September the 11th, go through this exercise again, and ask you to consider approving that. All right, thanks for it. You can stay on up there if you want to, and we'll move to the financial statement for July 2023.
Okay. I provided the July 2023 financial statements and check register for your review. As of July 31, we have collected 102.9% of our budgeted ad valorem tax revenues compared to the 96.4% that we had received last year. We're almost 3% over budget now, so a 5% increase for next year seems to be pretty conservative, as I mentioned in the budget presentation. Also, our state revenues are tracking higher than at this point last year due to the advancement in technology allocation of $3.38 million that we received in July. And as I said in the budget presentation, these funds are allocated for use in FY24, in the FY24 budget. Our total expenditures and transfers out in the general fund as of July 31 were 87.9% of the budget compared to 88.2% last year. All things being equal, we should be at 83% of our budget in the 10th month of the fiscal year, but we're a little above that mark due to payments for some large one-time expenditures. I wanted to talk about a new line item on the cash report. If you noticed, it's called the investment in treasuries. And in early July, we finalized an agreement with Regions Treasury Management Services to begin our commercial sweep services. This is an arrangement to sweep our excess cash from the general fund operating account into a mutual fund investment account on a nightly basis. And our excess cash then earns interest based on the daily market rates for U.S. Treasuries. So for July, our activity in the sweep account earned us about $76,000 in interest in just that 1 month. This arrangement will also allow for line of credit advances when we do get to our low cash months if needed. The line will only advance the minimum amount to cover payments. So that will save us money on interest incurred when and if we have to draw on the line in the fall. And the interest earnings on that account will be deposited into our general fund bank account on the first of every month following that month. So like on August 1st, we received the $76,000 in our bank account. And our monthly statements and check registers are available for viewing on our website upon board approval, and all bank accounts have been reconciled as of July 31, 2023.
Really appreciate the creative, inventive ways to best utilize our funds. That's outstanding. Good work. Thanks. Board members, I recommend approval of the financial statement for July 2023.
You've heard the superintendent's recommendation to approve the financial statement for July 2023. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second,
Second.
any comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Item 6, I recommend the board approve consent items for out-of-state overnight field trips.
You've heard the superintendent's recommendation to approve out-of-state overnight field trips. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second,
Second.
any discussion?
Sure. Dr. Freeman, could you just take us through a little bit of the process of how these field trips are vetted and
Yep.
what it means when we say we've approved them, what we look at?
Yes, it starts with, of course, the application process to the principal from a teacher, and some of the, just to disaggregate them out, as it relates to competitive things, field trips like that are pretty well set in stone, athletic events, things of that nature. But academics and arts are a little bit different. Sometimes you have arts competitions, maybe theater or choral, band, that already prescribed dates, and this is what you do to compete. But most, if not all of our some of our academic trips are competitive as well, such as some you have on here tonight, like debate. But a lot of them are enriching experiences. And so part of the application process is that a principal is to vet out if they are related to content standards in particular areas. So for example, one tonight that we talked about was Spanish and Family Consumer Sciences at the middle school. And so Alicia would have looked at all of that and said, here are the content standards that are being covered, and this is the way that the learning extends. Because candidly, it is quite an investment. Now, that's one in particular that's quite an investment for parents to take. And so it goes through that process. By the time I get it, the principal has said it is approved, they're agreeable to the trip. And so once I see it, I don't take any action, of course, because you were the voters on this. But I do want to tell you that we have probably for several years had field trip conversations. We are continuing to have those, and I think that our principals would agree that there is some necessity to tighten some of our field trips up. There are a lot of good rationales for doing it. Sometimes it's recruiting tools for programs. They're great experiences. I don't think any of us would deny that, but in the essence of trying to do what's best for families, we want to be conscientious of that. And so there is still conversation. I think principals would nod their head that I'm asking them to have that kind of conversation to find ways to tighten up the length of time we're taking trips, if they're valuable, and making sure they're more prescriptive to some academic outcomes. We're not where I think we ought to be, but it is a balance of the value add of these experiences that we can do in this community versus what's economically feasible for families. So I think it's an ongoing conversation.
And I know we've had this conversation in the last couple of years, and I appreciate Dr. Freeman, you and our principals really engaging in this, as well as our teachers. There are a lot of great trips, but as public schools, I think part of our goal is to also ensure that anything that is actually central to the curriculum is made available to as many students as possible. And I know that part of that process also is, I've seen forums of, if students aren't able to go on these trips for whatever reason, what are we going to do to ensure that curriculum objective is met while their classmates are on trips somewhere else?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I can give you one example. I just mentioned one field trip earlier to you. I'm holding on to 3 fundraising requests now, depending on your vote, to start fundraising to offset costs for trips like that. That's one example. So that's a typical thing that will be done. It requires some effort on students' part, and unfortunately, probably parents get involved in fundraising. I'm sure y'all are understanding of that. But it's an effort to offset those costs to try to release some of the pressures of trips that can cost over $1,000. So that is a component of the application that we do require that there be some alternate options for raising funds. And then we have a smaller fund called Rebels Helping Rebels that oftentimes can assist families if there's a need to do it. It doesn't cover everything, but it certainly goes a long way. Trying to make sure we balance giving everybody an opportunity.
And Dr. Freeman, I think that not only do we have alternatives for how students can raise funds, but there's also alternative academic programming for the students who are unable to get
That's right.
so that they're not missing out on those
That's right.
academic objectives. And, from my perspective, I don't speak for the board, but from my perspective, it's really important that when these are trips for academic classes, that we make sure that everybody is given as close to possible the same academic experience.
You guys want to comment back there? Give that.
No, I think some of the changes that we talked about in Rebel Lead this summer was evaluating our field trips, and really 2 or 3 things that we kind of added as a criteria would be that 50% of the trip has to be spent on the educational piece that really adds value to the experience, and also trying to minimize the number of school days out. So some of our trips are shifting to cover, it might be as long of a trip, but it's over a weekend where they come back on a Sunday versus a Saturday, so that they're shifting the school days that they're away. And some of these programs, like Dr. Freeman said, you buy your ticket for this program, you're already paying for the number of days. So if we decreased it even more with some of them, then you would have paid for something you're not going to get if you don't stay the extra day, kind of thing. So we just looked at the calendar and trying to shift days to make it where they're not missing as many school days, but also getting the same shared experiences. So
Those are good steps.
Yeah.
All right, all in favor?
Under business, item A, I recommend that the board approve the owner-architect agreement for renovations to the girls' locker room at Vestavia High School.
You've heard the superintendent's recommendation to approve the owner-architect agreement for renovations to the girls' locker room at Vestavia Hills High School. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second,
Second.
any questions, comments?
And this is the project to renovate for additional showers. Right now, we have a trailer sitting in the back. When I say we have needs, I really mean we have needs. And so right now, we have a trailer for showers sitting in the back of our building for our female athletes until we get this project done.
All in favor?
Item B, I recommend the board approve the licensing agreement with Embroidery General Incorporated.
You've heard the superintendent's recommendation to approve the licensing agreement with Embroidery General. Motion to approve?
So
Second,
Second.
any questions? Are you going to explain that?
Yeah, this is something, Whitby Eats has taken the lead on this. Over the course of this last year, we've signed several of these agreements, and it really allows them to produce our materials that are our products that are licensed brands of the district, and then we get a bit of a return on a percentage of return. And we've had paid several $100s probably this year just with that process for us, but it does more than anything protect our brands.
These agreements allow us to have some quality control over the products that are bearing our marks.
Yeah, so if it's VH or something that's branded, it doesn't turn into something that we do not approve. It's not part of our brand guidelines, and that's a good thing. That's right.
All right. So moved, everyone? We good? Huh?
Okay.
We good.
Appropriate. Item C, I recommend the board approve the revision to the board policy 5.10.3, and this is the policy that is related to employee leave.
You've heard the superintendent's recommendation to approve the revision to Board of Education Policy 5.10.3. Do you have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second,
Second.
Any questions?
The main thing I would say here is that there is some additional language in here for families with adopted children. That is the main focus of the change as it relates to taking sick leave, family medical leave, considerations, et cetera. So just an addition of something that certainly needed.
All in favor?
All right, Board, I recommend the approval of revision to Board Policy 6.28, and this is the mental health services opt-in policy.
For the superintendent's recommendation to approve the revision to the Board of Education Policy 6.28. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Questions?
Board members, I want to point out one particular area of this, and it says, furthermore, ongoing school counseling services shall not include those school counseling services which are split into domains not requiring a mental health therapist or other mental health therapeutic license. Our counselors do a whole lot of whole class group work and some small class work with students that doesn't require mental health therapy. This policy that was created last year created more oversight than was necessary. So this is an amendment to that to give more of the flexibility of what our counselors need to be doing anyway. So it basically removes the opt-in portion when it's not involving a mental health therapist.
All in favor?
Last one, I recommend the board approve policy 7.13, which is entitled Extended Learning Opportunities.
For the superintendent's recommendation to approve the Board of Education Policy 7.13. Have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second. Board members, this is the new policy. We have had this practice in place since last year when the legislature passed a law that required schools to provide extended learning opportunities. That means students can get elective credits for things that they do outside of the school day if it meets the approval of conditions that are laid out, and that's what this policy is. So if it's some classes or extracurriculars that can qualify that are not part of the school day, students can receive elective credit. To my knowledge, last year, we have had nobody use an ELO in our system. It wasn't practice last year. This just is a policy, it just codifies it really in our policy manual. But it's open and available to any entities that want to make application to try to allow this for students.
All in favor?
All right, item 8 is personnel, and board members, I recommend approval of personnel actions as submitted.
For the superintendent's recommendations to approve the personnel items submitted. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? All right. So if there is an individual desiring to speak, they shall stand and give his or her name and their address. The presentation should be as brief as possible, and in no event shall such address exceed 3 minutes. The speaker may make statements about their particular concern with school operations and programs. In public session, however, the board will not hear personnel complaints against particular school personnel or against any person connected with the school system. Other means are provided whereby the board may consider and dispose of legitimate complaints involving individuals and employees within the school system. Is anyone here tonight that would like to speak? All right, great. Well, then we're going to move on to our executive session. I will enter a motion to move into executive session for the purpose of real estate. I want to remind all of us of the following. No action can be taken in an executive session. There will be no vote taken in the executive session. No minutes of the executive session will be made. I request Dr. Freeman, Courtney Brown, Dr. Rainey, Mr. Boone, Blake Crow, John Lariello attend the executive session. I estimate the executive session will last approximately 60 minutes. Following the executive session, the board meeting will reconvene. Mr. Boone, can you comment on the motion for an executive session?
You have accurately stated Alabama law, and you should say whether you think the board, upon reconvening, may take action or may not take action.
Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay.